Hello, my name is Brant Hutt, and my channel is Discerning What is True. And my title of reading today that is sharing with you is The Beginning of the Greek Philosophy by Manly P. Hall. This was a little booklet he published back, I think, in 1934. And that was the same way with the other particular book. It's 1934 I just shared with you a few minutes ago. So this is part one of Manly P. Hall's giveaways, or I should say, shared to his students back in the 1930s. And I recollect that it was basically, there were students basically, these were what I call pamphlets that were mailed out in the mail to the students all across the United States, possibly even to the rest of the world. So let's get into it here. Greek philosophy had its beginning with the seven Sophias. Of these, Thales was the most part for for the most for the foremost, being deeply versed in all natural wisdom, whereas the other six were honored principally for the eminence in jurisprudence, morality, and ethics. The Greek word for wisdom is called Sophia, and one who has raised his soul to the eminent degree of knowledge came to be called a Sophias, or a wise man. It was the seven Sophias who formulated the laws that resulted in the establishment of the Greek civilization upon the foundation which they laid. The Hellenistic states rose to superlative heights of culture, giving to the world the greatest aggregation of thinkers ever produced by a single people. Philostratus thus defines the Sophias as the original Greeks. We must regard the ancient Sophias arts as philosophical rhetoric. For it discusses the themes that philosophers treat of, but whereas they, by their method of questioning, set snares for knowledge and advance step by step as they confirm the minor points of their investigations, but assert that they have still no sure knowledge. The Sophists of the old school assume a knowledge of that whereof he speaks. At any rate, he introduces his speeches with such phrases as I know, or I am aware, or I have long observed, or for mankind there's nothing fixed and sure. This kind of introduction gives a tone of nobility and self-confidence to his speech and implies a clear grasp of the truth. The opinions of the Sophists were so varied that their thought is not susceptible of organization into any general body of doctrines. In fact, the term, as originally applied, was honorary title signifying intelligent excellence, but in no way limiting or identifying the nature of the thought. It is generally acknowledged that many philosophers of eminent attainment were termed Sophists, but the word later fell into disrepute until it came to signify professional teachers or those who taught philosophy for prescribed fees. Most reference to the Sophists which have descended to this day originated among their adversaries, one of the chief of whom was Socrates, who accused the Sophists of his time of prostituting knowledge for gain. Thales of Mitras, that is in the 5th century BC, a Phoenician extraction, has the distinction of being the first upon whom the title Sophias, or the wise, was confirmed. Thales, Thales, spent the greatest part of his life in travel. He was initiated into the mysteries of Cretians, penetrated into Asia and Phoenicia, and his last and most extensive journey was to Egypt, where he was instructed in the arts and sciences by the priests of the temple of Jupiter at Memphis. Being the first of the Greeks to engage in speculative learning, he was regarded with special veneration, and in his 59th year was honored with the title of the Wise. Though deeply versed in occult lore, his philosophy was evolved within his own mind. having received no aid in the interpretation of the elaborate metaphysics of the Eastern nations, he was dignified with the additional title of the self-learned. Cicero acknowledges Thales to be the first author of philosophy. Strabo, that he was the first of the Greeks to inquire into natural causes of mathematics. Plutarch called him the inventor of philosophy. Justin Martyr, the most ancient of philosophers, and Tertullian, the first of natural philosophers. The basic principles of the philosophy of Thales are as follows. Quote, water is the first principle of all natural bodies, from which they come, of which they are composed, and upon which they subsist, and to which they will ultimately be resolved. Number 2, humility, because it is present in the seed of all living creatures, is the basis of generation. 3, God is that which hath neither beginning nor end. 4, the world is full of gods and heroes, which exist invisible in the air, and in their invisible states that these entities are called souls. Number 5, soul is a self-moving nature having within itself the power of moving other things. And lastly, number 6 is the world is alive and God is the soul thereof, diffused through every part through the medium of water. Interesting perspective here on the issue of water. This was probably done also, I'm just thinking in the back of my mind here. It'll come to me. Anyway, Bias is the title the wise conferred upon him because he purchased from slavery some captive Messenian girls and reared them as his own daughters, later giving them portions of his estate and returning them to their own parents. Bias was much given to pleading the cause of the oppressed and was famed throughout Greece for his knowledge of jurisprudence. Those who came to him seeking advice on problems of right living invariably received this answer. Quote, before you perform any act, behold your own face in a mirror. If your face seems handsome, do something handsome thing that is worthy of it. If it seem ill formed, do something beautiful deed that will supply the defect of nature. Quote. The death of Bias, Bios, was a dramatic event. After pleading the cause of a fellow citizen in the courts, Bias, who was very old, seated himself to await the decision of the judges. The court rendered judgment in favor of Bias and disbanded, only discovered that the aged jurist dead in his seat. Bias was not the founder of any important philosophical system, but is honored principally because of his deep practical insight into issues of daily life. The following are representations of the following are representative of his precepts. Number 1, he is indeed unfortunate who cannot bear misfortune. Number 2, it is a disease of the mind to desire after such things or cannot be reasonably attained. This is pretty strong here, folks. Number 3, the most difficult thing to bear courageously is a change for the worse. Number 4, it is better to decide a difference between our enemies than between our friends. For in the first place, one of our enemies will become a friend, but in the second place, one of our friends will certainly become an enemy. Number 5, we should so live that it becomes of no moment whether life be long or short. Number 6, that leader of the state gains most glory who first himself obeys the laws of his state. Number 7, those who busy themselves in vain knowledge resemble owls who see only in the night, that is, opinions, but are blind in the light, which are the facts. I like that. Don't you like that? I'll say that again. Number 7. Those who busy themselves in vain knowledge resemble owls, hoot, who see only in the night, that is opinions, but are blind in the light, the facts. Pittacus combined both military and judicial power. The people of Mitylene chose him as a general of their armies, and later, by popular vote, elevated him to the tyranny, the state of absolute rulership. He governed the Mediterraneans for 10 years, greatly improving the laws of the state, and at the end of that time, feeling his age unequal to the burden, resigned the government in spite of the protests of his people. He died at the age of 100 years old, according to Lucian. Pittacus is remembered chiefly for what he called his great sentence, 2 simple but all-powerful words, quote, no opportunity, end quote. His political precepts may be summed up in his own statement taken from Plutarch, quote, that ruler is indeed happy who has made his subjects afraid, not of him, but for him, end quote. Being a man in high position, sorrow weighed heavily upon the soul of Pittacus. On one occasion he was moved to say, reproach not the unhappy, for the hand of God is upon them. Quote. Socrates, Pittacus was unhappily married, his wife being of birth and station above him. On one occasion his wife overthrew the table where he and some guests were dining. Seeing that his friends were troubled, Pittacus remarked, quote, each of you have some misfortune. He is happiest who has none more serious than a nagging wife, end quote. The following are representatives of his precepts. Number 1, the greatest good is to do the present thing well. Okay, so what you're involved in that particular thing, you need to do that well. Your perspective is right there, not outwardly, other ways. Number 2, it is the duty of a wise man to foresee evil and to prevent it. Number 3, it is the duty of a valiant man to overcome evil when it is at hand. Number 4, the past is certain. That which is to come is obscure. Number 5, he who envies another is mad. Yeah, it is. That's madness. Yeah, that's a real sad fact. It is. This philosopher pardoned the murderer of his own son and released him to liberty, saying, pardon is better than penitence. That's a quote. Chilon of Lacedaemon was a philosopher of such superior wisdom that his words rang among the oracles. 3 of his precepts were, on the authority of Plinian, placed in the temple of Delphi, inlaid in letters of gold upon marble. Interesting how they did this, folks. They made sure things were supposedly going to last. They used letters of gold upon marble. That's how important they saw society and civilization to be. They didn't, Anyway, these precepts were, first, that every man should know himself. Yes, they should. Second, that moderation is the secret of happiness. And third, that money is the curse of misery. I'll say these again, folks, because they're very important. First, that every man should know himself. Second, that moderation is the secret of happiness. And third, that money is the cause of misery. He further declared that love and hate were the most fierce of the affections of the soul. He therefore fashion the following precepts. Love all things as though sometime you might hate them, and hate all things as though sometimes you might love them. Yeah, this guy's a pretty cool guy. I like him. Good quotes. Chiron once asked Aesop what Jupiter was doing. The famous writer of fables replied, Jupiter is continually pulling down the high and raising up the low. Quote, end quote. Chiron died embracing his son when the youth was declared victor in the Olympian Games. The aged man's joy was so excessive that his heart was unable to stand the strain. Among the moral sentences of Chiron are the following. 1. The learned differ from the unlearned, in that the wise have a good hope. Number 2. 3 things are difficult: to conceal secrets, to make good use of leisure, and to bear the injuries of the unjust. 3. A ruler of the state must not think upon any transitional mortal thing, but only upon those things which are eternal and immortal. Number 4. If you are strong, behave mildly, that you may be respected rather than feared. 5. Fear that man who is inquisitive into the business of others. Number 6, let not your tongue run more swiftly than your mind. Number 7, prefer honest loss to unjust gain. Number 8, go slowly to the feasts of your friends, but go swiftly to their misfortunes. And that is the conclusion of this particular piece by Manly P. Hall. I thought this was some pretty good stuff here. Some of the quotes here are really brilliant, just simply brilliant, especially from some from Thales, and then also from very even part, but I was going to say here, what I'm trying to think, Bios, and then Pittacus was also a brilliant man, apparently. Yeah, I like this one here. We should so live that it becomes of no moment whether life be long or short. Live it to the best. Brilliant stuff. Okay, just want to appreciate you guys for being here. This again is the beginning of Greek philosophy by Manly P. Hall. This is part 1, I understand, and hopefully we'll try to do part 2 a little later. Okay. All right. Thank you for being here. You have a good evening.